Hey guys, welcome to the UFC Fight Prediction channel. And today we'll be talking about the UFC Fight Night headlined by Holm and Irene Aldana. But before we get there, let's quickly recap of what happened in their last event. So it was a really good event for me where I got four right and one wrong on the main card. The only wrong prediction was Brendan Royval versus Kai France. I thought Kai France would win by decision, but Brendan Royval totally surprised me. His range, his setup for the strikes was really good, and even after getting rocked from a solid hook, Royval was doing his a little chicken dance, but still managed to hit a perfect spinning back elbow on Kara's chin and then managed to submit him. So credit where it's due. So hats off to Brendan Royval there. Apart from that, I said that Davidu and Caitlin Vieira were going to win by decisions, precisely how I said it would happen. Then in the co-main event, Jan Blachowicz was able to TKO Reyes, even though I thought Reyes was the favorite, but I predicted or I recommended betting on Jan Blachowicz considering the odds, and I personally put money on Jan Blachowicz winning by a knockout, and that was a really good bet for me. In the main event, Israel Adesanya was able to completely dismantle Paulo Costa. I saw that happening as I predicted, but I didn't see that happening in the first or the second round. So kudos to Israel Adesanya to be able to thwart such a big challenge so easily. So that was it. I was able to make some good money in this event, and hoping that we can replicate the same for this event. So without further ado, let's hop in. So the first fight on the main card is between Dequan Townsend and Dusko Todorovic. So let's talk about Todorovic first. He's a Serbian talent who last fought on the Contender Series in 2019 and won his fight with Teddy Ash via a unanimous decision. He fought the fight in the clinch for at least 9 to 10 minutes of the 15-minute duration, dominating and inflicting damage. But it wasn't like his usual performance where he finishes dudes in the first round. So he's 6'1" with a 75-inch reach, but I think he's slightly undersized for the middleweight division, where you have people like Paulo Costa and Israel Adesanya, Robert Whittaker, and so on. So talking about finishes in the first round, he fought our very own Demolidor, Michel Pereira, that we talked about a couple of weeks ago, and knocked him out in the first round right before his Contender Series fight. He has well-rounded skills with sharp hands and has turned in both knockouts and submission wins. As the main card opener, he would be looking to impress the UFC fan base in his debut. What I'm impressed the most about this guy is his defensive head movement. And what I don't like about this guy is that he keeps his hands down even in the middle of a firefight and relies only on his head movements. In the fight with Teddy Ash, he got clipped at least a couple of times, and it won't be a good idea getting clipped with a much larger Dequan Townsend. So even though Townsend will not be particularly fast in the middleweight division, Todorovic needs to be careful of Townsend's reach advantage, fast jabs, and in my opinion, he would look to attack in bursts between controlling the fight on the cage or on the ground. Now let's talk about Townsend. Townsend is coming into this fight with 0-3 record in the UFC and probably has his job on the line. He lost all of his 3 fights handily, with 2 of them being at 205 pounds and 1 being at 185. This fight is also happening at 185, where he probably has a fair bit of size advantage over Todorovic. But I think there would be a speed differential against Townsend. Townsend has had over 30 fights in total and is a very experienced guy on paper. He remains fairly calm in the fight, which is one of the cornerstones of being experienced. However, he has a really flawed way of accepting position and not showing urgency when he's held against the cage or taken down. It happened in all of his previous 3 fights. He has really good jabs, which are fast at light heavyweight, but I don't think Todorovic will be losing sleep over that, considering his effective head movement. As Townsend has been held against his will in dominating positions, he sometimes tries to headhunt with haymakers to make his opponent pay, but usually ends up being taken down underneath those loopy haymakers that he comes up with. I wouldn't rate him stellar on his fight IQ either. He hurt Bevan Lewis with a couple of thunderous leg kicks, but did not capitalize after. So, just to summarize, Todorovic is an undefeated Serbian prospect who has been dominating competition in Europe and is hungry for success. Even though all his fights except the last one have been early finishes, the last one was a dominating win in the clinch. Townsend is extremely susceptible to being controlled in a position, so this is pretty much a tailor-made fight for Todorovic. However, Townsend is fighting for his place in the UFC, so expect him to be more aggressive, which could be good for him, but could also play against him, as Todorovic can go for a takedown or a clinch, timing his level changes. Todorovic has crisp striking and awesome head movement, and I think Todorovic will win this by decision. So the next fight on the card is Kyla Phillips versus Cameron Els. So let's talk about Phillips first. He comes out of the blocks fast and throws a variety of strikes, and a lot of them are flashy. Fortunately for him, they are usually fairly effective as well. If you look at his hook kicks, his flying knees, his spinning back kick, all of them land pretty much every time he throws. So that's definitely working for him. He's fast and he comes in and out of pocket really quickly, and that's when he tags his opponents and gets out of there when they are countering him. He often targets his opponent's legs with effective calf kicks, as you might have seen in the Gabriel Silva fight. He tries to take his opponent's back and has been very effective with it. He also has a variety of takedowns in his back pocket. He's good defensively and keeps his guard up. He also has good head movement to evade strikes. He possesses good takedown defense and is really proficient and tricky with jiu-jitsu. You could probably see that from his most recent fight with Gabriel Silva, where he was able to dominate the Brazilian jiu-jitsu black belt on the ground. Cardio has been a slight issue for Kyler in the past, but he showed great improvement in the last fight with Gabriel Silva. His fight with James Gray ended quick in 46 seconds, where he defended an early takedown and then dropped elbows to the side of his head and then finished him with brutal ground and pound. So what it tells me is he has great finishing instincts as well. Now let's talk about Cameron Els. Cameron is a tall guy for this weight class and comes out aggressive with high risk and high reward techniques like flying knee. And his gas tank and fight IQ, along with fight experience, is kind of questionable in my opinion. Cameron Els trains out of Jackson Wink and is making his UFC debut. I'm a little surprised about this matchup because Cameron hasn't had the experience that most fighters do, especially at lighter weight classes. He's gone past the first round twice and lost both those fights. Also, the combined record of his last two opponents is 3 wins and 15 losses, with his penultimate bout being against a guy with 0-1 record. He was dominating the first round with Damo Whedon, beating the living shit out of the guy on the ground, but ended up getting TKO'd early in the second, which kind of tells me that he can blow up his gas really quickly if he's trying to finish the fight, but does not really have the fight IQ to come back. He was taken down within the first minute of his fight against Tom Major, who was coming from an independent gym and had a record of 0-0 before this fight. When you say independent gym, it typically means that you're not really training with anyone who has experience doing this. So, in summary, this fight is where Kyla Phillips can showcase his well-rounded skills. Apart from a puncher's chance, I don't see Cameron Els winning this one. Kyla has much better stand-up, much better ground skills, better cardio, better fight IQ, you name it. However, the odds on this fight have been butchered, with Phillips coming at minus 450. Now, I'm not saying the odds are wrong. I actually would put the odds between minus 400 and minus 500. But it's just that you can't really bet someone with such odds. So I'm not going to bet straight on him, but I think he will be able to finish Cameron, and that's where my money is going. Kyla Phillips by finish. So the next fight is between Germaine de Randamie versus Juliana Pena. Let's talk about de Randamie first. De Randamie is a very tall and a rangy bantamweight, standing at 5 feet 9 inches tall, and she's coming off of a failed bid to capture the women's bantamweight belt. Even though it was a unanimous decision loss, she did give the champ a fair bit of problems on the feet. She's a very accomplished Muay Thai fighter and has a very flat-footed Muay Thai stance. She times her strikes really well, especially when people are trying to blitz her. If you haven't seen her fight against Aspen Ladd, please go watch it. You will see the power she packs. She was getting the better of the stand-up exchanges with Amanda Nunes, and Nunes had to take her down repeatedly in order to win that fight. Germaine likes to push forward and blast low leg kicks and has a piston off of her right hand. That right hook that she landed on Aspen Ladd was a thing of beauty. In this fight, de Randamie would want to avoid a ground contest at all times. What will help her is her good takedown defense and maybe a little bit of height, size, and strength advantage. De Randamie throws great knees in the clinch, but getting the clinch will open her up to Pena's body lock, sweeps, and takedown. Now let's talk about Pena. Pena is coming off of a unanimous decision victory over Nico Montano after an extended layoff to pursue motherhood. Pena attacks linearly, throwing hooks to close the distance so she could get a clinch takedown. She has really good top control where she attacks with elbows and looks for submissions at the smallest of openings. She pulls guard when she can't take someone down. Pena has a hard time taking Jessica Eye down, even though she did take her down eventually. She spent a fair bit of time under Kat Zingano in their fight in the first and the second round after getting taken down, but was able to reverse the position and take Zingano's back for the majority of the round. She took Kat Zingano down again in the third round and controlled her on the ground, switching between ground and pound and submission attempts. And if she gets Germaine down, that's what she'd be looking to do. Pena was taken down by Shevchenko twice, but took her down herself once. Pena has been able to deploy her ground game, particularly when her opponents try to take her down. and she was able to reverse the position later. We got to see how this strategy would change when her opponent, Germaine, does not engage in that game, and I think that's what's going to happen. Pena used to have only body lock takedowns, but off late she has also incorporated front leg headlock takedown in her arsenal. So, to summarize the whole fight, the premise of this prediction is fairly simple. If the fight stays on the feet, it's going to be a really good night for De Randamie. Pena's striking is fairly basic and is just a way to get to the body lock takedowns. If Pena takes her down, she could control De Randamie there or even get a submission. Point is, will Pena be able to take De Randamie down, who's constantly working on her wrestling defense and ground game? Based on the tape that I have watched, I feel Pena's takedown game lacks technique or the strength that Sarah McMahon or Amanda Nunes has, and it would be hard for her to take Germaine De Randamie down in a 3-round fight. So my pick is going to be Germaine De Randamie, probably winning by decision. Now the time for the co-main event, and it is between big boys. It's Jorgen de Castro versus Carlos Felipe. Let's talk about De Castro first. De Castro is coming into this fight with 1-1 record in the UFC, and he stands at 6 feet with a 74-inch reach. His output is not that high, with 2.2 strikes landed per minute, and has an accuracy of around 41%. This includes majority time dealing with a much taller and longer opponent in Greg Hardy. In his debut, he knocked out Justin Tafa and was doing really well in his second fight against Greg Hardy till he hurt his foot through a checked leg kick. He was merely a shadow of himself after the injury for the rest of the fight. He has good takedown defense, and even though this fight is not expected to hit the ground until either of them gets knocked down, he's extremely athletic for a big guy. He tried and landed a couple of flying knees against his Contender Series opponent. He has the ability to change angles, and his striking and defense are high level. He's got thunderous leg kicks and body kicks, and I think those, along with his powerful hooks, will be the most important weapons for him in this fight. Let's talk about Carlos Felipe now. Carlos is fighting for the second time in the UFC after going to a majority loss to Sergey Spivak. He also stands at 6 feet tall with a 75-inch reach. He has a higher output than his opponent, Jorgen, at 2.93 strikes landed per minute with a 36% accuracy, which means he throws a fairly high amount of strikes than Castro. He's primarily a striker who looks to stand and bang. He has a decent cardio for such a big man and can definitely last 3 rounds. He doesn't want to take the fight to the ground and puts pressure and tries to land big hooks and occasional straight punches to his opponent. He's not really a big threat with the leg kicks either. So, in summary, I'm kind of surprised that the co-main event of a UFC main card has fighters coming in with a combined record of 2-2 in the UFC. Based on skills, De Castro is way better and should be able to win. However, if I would give the output / cardio edge to Felipe. I feel that the lack of output in Castro's fight with Greg Hardy was due to his foot injury, even though he seemed to have some gas in the tank throughout the fight. The odds on this one makes me a little nervous as Castro comes in with a probability of 73.5% of winning, which translates to minus 275. And it is probably not worth the risk to bet straight. However, I am willing to risk it for a higher reward with Castro by knockout. So I see him winning this fight with brutal leg kicks. Now the main event of the evening, and to be frank with you, off late I haven't really liked Holly Holm's main events. They tend to be pretty boring, and she fights the same fight time and again. I might be biased, but that's how I feel. So in case you have errands to run or do things that you can only do on Saturdays and you don't end up doing because there are fights, this is probably the best weekend to do so. Anyway, there's still opportunity to make money, so let's get into it. Let's talk about Holly Holm first. Holly is 5'8" and has a reach of 69 inches, which is on the higher end of this division. Holly Holm utilizes her high cardio abilities by always staying mobile. However, her output is around 2.75 strikes landed a minute, but she expends a ton of energy moving around the cage, and that's her first line of defense. Holly obviously has faced much better competition, with Amanda Nunes, Valentina Shevchenko, Chris Cyborg, Misha Tate, Ronda Rousey, Jermaine Durandamy, Megan Anderson, to name a few. Holly Holm rarely pressures her opponents and chooses to move around her pressuring opponents to dart in and out with punch and kick combinations. However, she needs to be extremely careful, as Aldana is really good at moving backwards and countering with straight right. Holly Holm, even though she comes from a boxing background, her most effective techniques are side kicks and roundhouse kicks, and kicks that she throws to keep her distance. Now let's talk about Aldana. Aldana will be the taller of the two ladies in the main event at 5'9" and might have a slight reach disadvantage. She's primarily a boxer and has really crisp boxing combinations. Aldana lands over 6 strikes a minute, which is more than double the output of Holly Holm. However, she almost absorbs 6 strikes per minute, even though her defense is fairly better than Holm's. Aldana is coming off of a great knockout of Ketlen Vera in the first round and has her confidence really high. However, the biggest name Aldana has fought so far is Raquel Pennington, and she lost that fight. Aldana was doing really well with Correa in the first round when Correa was using only her boxing. However, in the second round, when Correa mixed punches with kicks, she landed a lot more on Aldana and possibly won that round. However, Aldana found a way to win in the third round by a belly down armbar after hurting Correa. So what it tells me is that Aldana finds a way to win even when things are not going her way. I recently learned, after putting my bet on this fight, that Aldana contracted COVID 2 months before the fight, and it had a big impact on her cardio for about 2 weeks. If I had known this at the time of placing the bet on this one, I would have probably passed on Aldana. But I'm still going to stick to my prediction based on the improvements I have seen in Aldana. So, in summary, Holly Holm is coming off of a lackluster decision win over Raquel Pennington. Aldana, on the other hand, has shown marked improvements in her game, especially in her last couple of fights. She knocked out Ketlen Vera, who is a legit contender at bantamweight. Holly Holm has only been beaten by women who have been UFC champions: Nunes, Tate, Shevchenko, and Jermaine Durandamy. However, in my opinion, the lack of improvements and evolution in her game could be owed to her sticking with her longtime coaches, Jackson Wink, makes me reluctant to bet on her. Aldana has high striking output, which is more than double that of Holly's, along with better defense. Holly telegraphs her strikes by grunting right before she launches an offense, and that will help Aldana tremendously to see when the attacks are coming. Aldana has 93% takedown defense and has submissions off of her back, even if Holly manages to take her down. The only two questions that I'm not 100% about are Aldana's cardio, especially considering that she got COVID and she has never been to a 5th round before. And secondly, her work in the clinch if Holly decides to keep it there. Well, I'm banking on Aldana to improve further and take this win probably by decision. However, this is not a confident bet. Thanks for watching the video, guys. If you like it, please consider liking, sharing, and subscribing. I have also started an Instagram and a Facebook page dedicated to UFC betting. So please consider going there, and if you want to interact with me, please, I urge you to do that. And I'll be providing all the details in my YouTube description. Please go there, check it out, and I will see you next Thursday.